front-end development, so being, essentially a front-end developer, and then design, kind of how those two merge.
Balance and white space and repetition and rhythm and like all these visual patterns.
So all the actual flow that the user is moving through and the way that they're interacting and the feel and the vibe. Where do they kind of start to diverge a little bit? Where does front-end and design kind of diverge? So Aaron, we're back in the studio here. We're talking today about front-end development, so being, essentially a front-end developer, and then design, and kind of how those two merge. So there's obviously going to be some differences, some interactions with them, but let's just kind of talk there. So how would you kind of define design, and how would you define front-end development?
So front-end is kind of everything that encapsulates the code that you give to the client and that they run on their browser. So all the JavaScript for describing the UI, for describing the state of the app, and but also down to the CSS and how the page looks, and the HTML, the structure of the page, and all that.
So all the actual flow that the user is moving through and the way that they're interacting and the feel and the vibe. They talk user experience a lot when they're talking front end. Cool. So now design. Where does design come in?
Design is kind of like, it's a whole separate industry. Predating computers and stuff. It goes back to traditional design of posters and billboards and commercials and business cards and all this. But what we're interested in is kind of that web design. So where those traditional principles and patterns apply to creating a web interface. So it's things about balance and white space and repetition and rhythm and like all these visual patterns, but applying those to a web user interface.
Gotcha. So it's the actual how does it look, and then we kind of, and all the principles, and then we brought in front-end development to actually make it interactive in a way and tell a story in a different way than they were doing before, obviously, with magazines and all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of, I guess, where obviously they interact with each other. Where do they kind of start to diverge a little bit? Where does front end and design kind of diverge? Is this something that people can do both of these things? Should they only do one of them? Like, what are your thoughts?
I mean, as someone who does both of them,
you're like, I think no one should do both.
So let's say don't do it. No. I would say, it's definitely possible to do both, but there really aren't, like, there's not a lot of crossover of skill set. Like it's a whole nother world to do design. But that being said, there's benefits to knowing both the design and the front end, because they do interact, like you were saying, like a designer, comes up with the whole polished, high fidelity design and hands it off to the developer. But then it's the developer's job to interpret that into web technology.
And interpret the story, maybe, of where that design was even trying to go.
Right. Yeah.
So you started with design primarily, and you have moved over the years now to being, a front-end developer. And so how do you feel that having that design background has helped you move into the front-end space?
Yeah, I think it does help a lot. In the ideal world, like the design is all done before development happens, and then it's wrapped up, put a bow on it, and give it to the developers. But it's not always the case. It doesn't happen like that. So, sometimes a client might give us one page that was designed, and we have to extrapolate what every other page looks like based off that one page, which is a hard task for someone who's not trained in design, doesn't have a designer's eye.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So I found for cases like that, it's really helpful, and because I can see the designer's intent and how that is supposed to be extrapolated to other pages.
Interesting.
And or they might give us just the desktop designs, and we have to extrapolate what the mobile design looks like based on that. And so, I find myself using those skills a lot, even when I'm not designing, just in interpreting designs.
That makes sense. So, I mean, obviously, if you can have a design background and then move into front-end development, it seems to be beneficial to help with that overall story arc. But if you are someone that just is in the space, you started as a front-end developer, and that's what you do, what are some kind of design aspects or best practices or things that would be worth looking into as a front-end developer to help them, you know, help the designers basically in a way?
Yeah, I think it's one of the cases where a little bit goes a long way.
Okay.
You know, obviously they're separate fields, so you don't need to master them both. But I would say like when I look at a web page, and one thing that makes it immediately apparent that, you know, it was a developer and there was no design involved is like the inconsistency in margin and padding and spacing.
Okay.
It's just something that, you know, that if you're not like looking really closely, that a lot of developers will miss. And like, so I would say like as a general advice, just like pay attention to like if there's a 10 pixel spacing here and a 15 pixel spacing there, like the eye will catch that even if you don't really know what's wrong. So just detail oriented, I would say, and yeah, just consistency goes a long way.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because for me personally, when I think of design, I think much more artistic and free-flowing. And so maybe from a front-end development standpoint, that's part of it where like they're not even thinking as far as the fact that like, no, design has clear principles and rules to it. And the reason that it is appealing is because it actually follows these standards.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I never really thought of that before. Do you have other final thoughts? You know, maybe let's say someone that is looking to either get into design work or looking to get into being a front-end developer. I mean, are there things like cues that they could see to be like, hey, listen, I have a designer's eye or I have a front-end developer's mindset that could kind of push them in one of those directions? Red flags, like if you don't like math, maybe you shouldn't be a front-end developer, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think yeah, what we kind of mentioned a couple of times, that designer's eye, I think that a lot of times, you know, predates your skills in it. Like it's something you might be like more naturally inclined to. Like you just look at something and know that it's a little off, even if you can't put your finger on it. So that might, if you're a person who notices stuff like that, you know, kind of go that direction of design and, you know, learn the skills to help you, you know, identify that thing that you can't quite put your finger on.
Okay.
And then on the front end side, yeah, I think just if you're fascinated with the technology and like the technology is the part of it that excites you, then you know follow that. And then, but yeah, I think like I said before too, knowing a little bit of each side goes a long way.
It's going to help you be strong on either one.
Yeah.
Cool. I love it. Well, I appreciate this. I hope this gives some clarity to people that are in this space. And as always, I am excited to have you, the unicorn that knows both of these very well. So, yay, Bixley.
Well, thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Bixley Tech Tuesday. I hope you enjoyed some of that information about the interaction between the disciplines of front-end development and web design, how they interact with each other, and how understanding a little bit from each side can really level up your skills, either as a designer or as a front-end developer. And don't forget to check out the description box down below. We have a ton of really helpful links for you guys, including a link to our free custom software guide that just kind of gives you some tips and tricks and walks you through the process of planning out your own app idea. Now, if you feel like you're ready to get started on maybe developing that app or even just seeing if Bixley might be the right fit for you, check out our website, bixley.com. Right at the top of the homepage is a button that says Get My Roadmap. And what that allows you to do is actually set up a free 60-minute meeting and consultation with Chris himself. He'll give you all of his insight and feedback on your app idea, maybe even some estimates, and just seeing if we're the right fit for you. Until next time, this has been an episode of Bixley Tech Tuesday.